Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Entrepreneurs Galore. This is going to be episode number 4. Today, I have a very special guest all the way from Australia. His name is Alex James. He's the founder and creator of Meaningful Marketing. Now, I absolutely love that name because it literally hits the nail on the head, right? But aside from just loving the company name, Alex actually focuses on brand messaging and how to position your brand in the most effective way possible so you can stand out in whatever crowded market that you're a part of. And without further ado, here's Alex. Hey, Alex, how are you doing, man?
Hey, thank you for having me.
No, absolutely, man. I appreciate you coming on as well. So, like I mentioned, obviously, Alex is from Australia, so our time differences are quite significant. So currently, it's about 6:30 p.m. over here, but I think for Alex, he's just now waking up and getting his first sip of coffee.
I am in the future. Nothing crazy has happened yet to the planet, but if anything does, you'll be the first to know.
Nice, man. Yeah, so technically it's Wednesday for you. Obviously, it's still Tuesday for me. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's. By the way, I'm extremely terrified of Australia, um, just because of everything that I've seen in terms of like how humongous the rodents are over there and how humongous the spiders are. So
Yeah,
I don't ever
yeah.
plan on visit. But do
It's
you
a really
like it?
sensible choice. It's a really
Yeah.
sensible choice. I had to kill three spiders on the way to get coffee this morning. So, um, I do like it for a number of reasons other than the animals. No, the animals are cool from a distance. I'll say that much.
Okay. Yeah. So what do you like so much about Australia?
I'm in the city of Melbourne in Australia, which is kind of
Mm,
like down the bottom of it. The two biggest cities are Sydney and Melbourne, and Sydney's kind of like it's kind of got more like a Los Angeles vibe, and Melbourne
mm-hmm.
has much more of like a New York vibe to it.
Oh, okay.
And I really like Melbourne. It's I probably actually if Melbourne didn't exist, I probably wouldn't live in Australia. I'd be living somewhere else, but it's actually a great city.
Nice. So, have you ever been to New York? Like, I'm guessing you kind of know what that vibe is like, right? So you guys are very much like business savvy and like always like hustling and whatnot. I could obviously see that from your TikTok account. I mean, you have like more than 100,000 followers on there. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's like a really strong like kind of startup scene and people. It's pretty fast paced, but it's also like cold and miserable for a lot of the year as well. And I think that just motivates people.
oh, really? Man, I did not know that cold was actually a thing in Australia. I thought you guys were just
It
like,
is only in this one part of the country down the bottom. It's like closer to Antarctica than it is to like the northern part of Australia.
that is crazy. Yeah, I obviously, as you can tell, I did not pay attention to my world geography class at all in high school. So yeah, Alex. So that's great about Australia, right? So I'm really actually intrigued by a really great point that you brought up of that Melbourne is kind of the New York of Australia, right? So you're obviously surrounded by a lot of startups, and obviously you specialize in like brand messaging and brand positioning, right? So
Yeah.
how exactly has that helped you so far in terms of like making those connections and actually getting companies to be your client? What has that experience been like overall?
Actually, about 90% of my clients are based in the US.
Wow.
And these days I get all of my clients from either TikTok or just word of mouth. Um, because there's a really, as you know, there's like a really strong kind of software presence from coming from the US. There's a huge market there. There's a huge industry there, and software is one of these things where the product is often quite complicated, and it requires you to explain it simply so that people get it.
Hmm.
And so that's where people like me come in, where it's like, okay, cool, let's take this complicated product that does actually provide value, but it's hard to communicate that value, and let's kind of communicate it as effectively, as simply, and as compellingly as possible.
Understood. Yeah. So, would you say that, for example, which which thing do you find it like most difficult to actually work with clients like that who say they have like a very complicated software, and do you find it like difficult at all to work with these type of clients, or what's your
That's
experience
it,
been like?
it honestly, like it gives me energy. Like I'm like, cool, give me like the most complicated, dry, most boring thing in the world, and I will make
Mhm.
it interesting, and I'll make people want to at least investigate further.
Nice. Okay. So, um, would you say that your job also consists a lot of copywriting, and how important would exactly that be for a brand?
Yeah, so there's really three elements to it. And actually, just to like frame this up kind of correctly, let's I want to talk a little bit about like economic theory, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The floor is all yours. Please feel free to go do so.
We'll start high order, and then I'll bring it back down to how to effectively market a brand.
Okay.
So, if you are under the age of 40, you have been part of an economic experiment your entire life. Um, that experiment is called neoliberalism,
Mm,
neoliberal economic policy. And basically, what that means is it's an economic theory centered around the question, what if corporations made the rules? And that's kind of what we've been experiencing for the last 35, 40 years. It started with Margaret Thatcher in the UK. Ronald Reagan then kind of adopted these same policies. The policies kind of more specifically being like, well, if corporations made the rules, what if the rich kind of were in charge of society? What rules would they place? Well, they would say we need tax cuts on the rich,
mhm,
obviously. We need to deregulate industries and get rid of all of these like annoying kind of safety measures and all of these kind of guardrails. We need to privatize all of these kind of common assets like the electricity grid. Why should the government be like a private company could be owning that and like getting the wealth of that? People have to buy it. That's a captive market that you have there. That's amazing.
mhm,
So utilities, transportation, all of this stuff like that should be in private hands. And basically the narrative was, well, we need to like free the economy from the stranglehold of government and put it out into an open field and let the free market decide, right? um, there was no like evidence that this actually made society better. It just kind of made the rich richer, and it funneled wealth like from the middle class to the upper class. The real kind of like nail in the coffin for this as well was Bill Clinton, who kind of like was elected as like a leftist kind of person, came in, looked at these economic policies, and said, "Yeah, that looks good to me." And ever since then, both left and right, or at least right and center left
mhm,
parties across the world have differed on social issues of like, should gay people be allowed to get married? Should trans people exist? But they've very much agreed on like what is the economic theory that we are going to ascribe ourselves by. And this is why we've seen in the 1950s where between 1950 and 1960, 4% of the new wealth created in that decade went to the top 10%, and 96% went to the bottom 90%. From the years 2009 to 2019, 93% of the new wealth created in that decade went to the top 10%, and
that's
7% was
crazy.
left for the rest of us to kind of fight over, right? And so, what does this mean for your listeners? Well, it means that there is no middle class anymore. That
Mhm,
is gone. Um, and it's not coming back, at least not in our lifetimes, I suspect. What it means is that you need to become independently wealthy to lead a somewhat comfortable life. You need to be aiming to be in that top 10%. And you won't get into that top 10% by working for someone else.
mhm,
You need to be accruing capital. It's called capitalism, not laborism. You cannot win by performing labor. So you need to be accruing capital by building a product that people want, that solves a problem or fulfills a desire. And you need to be capturing the wealth created from that product or service for yourself. It is the only way. So, what does this have to do with marketing? Well, it means that you need to get very, very, very good at marketing, and you need to start taking it very, very seriously. It is not fun and games. Marketing kind of has this kind of arts and crafts kind of, fun kind of energy to it. It's not fun. It's deadly serious, and it's
Hmm.
deeply urgent that you not only understand product market fit, but you also understand message market fit. And what I do in my business is help companies, brands get to message market fit. As in, what is the message that makes sense for our market? And then how do we get that in front of them as much as possible? So from here, we can either kind of probably go in two directions, and I'll leave it up to you to decide. I can kind of walk you through like what is my process for like finding what the message, what the angle should be for a brand, or you can kind of ask me questions and we can kind of deep dive into like specific things. I'll let me know which
Yeah,
avenue you'd prefer.
no, I would definitely like to hear your thought process behind like everything that you do, and obviously from there, I think we could deep dive into a little bit more specifics. Uh,
Sure.
you brought up great points with the whole economic theory as well of about the entire neoliberalism because that's a lot of what I see here in the states, especially the one point that really hit home was the privatization of the energy sector. At least here in the state of Texas, um,
Mm.
we have the energy sector. It's completely privatized now by this company named ERCOT,
Mm.
and because of that, we had whenever we had some snowstorms, they literally just really messed a lot of people over just because of they couldn't keep the grid on anymore, just
Yeah.
because they were
Yeah.
just overflowing because we're not connected to the national grid anymore.
Right.
And that literally that literally ties into the theory and it goes all the way back to Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton as well. So yeah, but
Totally.
anyways, I digress from my rant. I could go on about that for ages.
Yeah.
But yeah, talk to me a little bit about like your thought process and how exactly do you effectively communicate a brand to product fit.
Yeah. So there's three kind of elements to it. And the way I kind of explain it to my clients is in the form of like a flower, like picture of flower. You've got the head of the flower, which represents your marketing. That's colorful, it's in full bloom, it's getting attention from the bees, right? Which is what a flower is designed to do. But we
Right.
also have to remember that our flowers don't grow in a vacuum, right? We're in a field of other wildflowers all competing for the same attention from the same bees. And so we need our flower to kind of stand taller above the rest. And that's where the stem comes in. And that is our messaging. The more precise, the more compelling our messaging, the taller we stand and the more attention we get from the bees, from our market, from our customers. And underneath that, underneath the dirt, we have the roots. Like it's not visible from the surface, but this is our kind of patch of dirt that we occupy that nobody else does. And that is our positioning. So all that is to say is that strong marketing comes from strong messaging, and strong messaging
Mhm.
comes from strong positioning. That is the unshakable truth. And to give you an example of like what this looks like in practice, I think probably like the one of the greatest kind of positioning experts of our time would be, I have looked around, I've kind of like looked into this deeply. It would be Donald Trump in 2016.
Mm.
However you feel about Donald Trump, his 2016 campaign was a masterclass in positioning, in messaging, in marketing. So how did he kind of position himself? Well, we had like, in America, we've got like the liberal to conservative kind of metric that every candidate is measured against, right? What Donald Trump did though was something super interesting, which was he introduced a new metric, which was this idea of a political outsider versus a political insider. And then he really pushed that through, and suddenly every candidate was measured against how inside the tent versus outside the tent they were, right?
That is so spot on, honestly.
And
I
so we had
agree.
people like Hillary Clinton, who's very much, center leftist, insider, very inside the tent. We had like Jeb Bush, who's also an insider, part of the Bush family dynasty, more towards the conservative side. We had Bernie Sanders, who was further left and kind of outside the tent, right?
Yes, I
And
would
so where
consider Bernie a little bit outside. The
right,
man
yeah,
is goofy, but like I think the common man, common layman can definitely relate to him, or he was able to relate to the people.
for sure, for sure. And he actually posed a threat to like the DNC as they were, right? That's why they had to kind of like
Yes,
put up walls.
yes,
But where did Donald Trump position himself in all of this? He kind of went to the extremes. He said, I am the most conservative and I am the most outsider person in this race. And what he did by doing that was he actually followed Peter Thiel's advice, which is create distance between you and your competitors. There was no one that was even close to him and close to this positioning. And what this positioning, this kind of far right, maximally outsider position, what that allowed him to do was have messaging that other candidates could not say or could not say with credibility, and that informed his marketing. So, for example, uh, he could say with credibility that there are too many career politicians in Washington. Like if you're Hillary, you can't really say that because you either are one or you have to work with them every single day to get deals done.
right.
But an outsider can say that without risking much, right? And so he could say there are too many career politicians in Washington, which informed the marketing, the head of the flower, drain the swamp, right?
Hmm.
If we go again, he was, one campaign, one position, far right conservative, political outsider. Well, what could he say that something that like a more moderate conservative could not say was maybe that all southern border immigration needs to stop, right?
Yes,
And so that informs the messaging that sorry, the marketing of build the wall. That's like an expression of that message. And then one more time, one more example from this like masterful campaign was uh, we need to recapture our nation's lost glory. That's someone who is an outsider, who is far right. They can say that with credibility, and it's believable when they say it. Therefore, when he says, make America great again, people are like, yeah, I believe that message. I believe in that message, and I believe it coming from you as well. It's all thanks to his positioning. What's super interesting about this is that Donald Trump used to be a registered Democrat, and he would donate to the Democratic Party in the 90s. And
yep.
in fact, he ran for president in the year 2000. And the two big
Oh, really?
policies that he ran on were universal health care and stricter gun control laws.
That's I actually did not know that he ran for presidency in 2000. That's
with
wild.
with a fairly liberal agenda. So what it tells us was that this positioning that he took in 2016 was not an accident. It was a strategic choice. And that allowed him to actually have that campaign that he had, win the primary, win the election, and change politics the world over as we know it for forever, really. And it's all the fault of that really, really strong positioning. And so this is what I tell my clients is I'm like, it all starts with how you are positioned in the marketplace. Who are people comparing you to? Once you understand that, then you can position yourself against that. That informs your messaging, that informs your marketing, that informs your success.
That's honestly, those are probably like some of the best examples that I've heard, um, in terms of like marketing and also positioning, especially the example of Donald Trump. Because me and my friends, we talk about this all the time because we obviously had to live through the the U.S. election, right? So, and obviously looking back on it, you're absolutely right that Donald Trump was just a masterclass on how to exactly to just provoke people, whether that be with those people would be with them or against him. It didn't matter. He knew exactly which buttons to press, and he knew exactly where he stood, and he knew that nobody else was on the same level or playing field as him. So I
Totally.
completely agree with your theory. It's not really a theory. It is what it is. He was an outsider, and
Mm.
on top of that, he was just telling people the reality of things that I think that opened up a can of worms, to be honest with you, for both the Democrats and also the Republicans in the states. But man, his brand, his positioning, it's incredible, like, to say the least. That's why he got elected president, even though everybody was shocked that this
Yeah,
actually happened in 2016. Um,
totally.
so obviously, Donald Trump is obviously an extreme example, right? Whereas he's a really good example, but
Mm.
he's obviously extreme. He's an extreme example, and I can see like how it will probably ruffle a little bit feathers, based off of your clients, right? So, how do clients end up taking this pitch of yours, or like what is the initial reaction to that?
Oh, um, I always when I'm kind of walking my clients through that, I always kind of frame it up and be like, all right, just put any kind of like pre-assumptions aside and like let's look at
Right.
this through like an analytical objective lens. Let's put on our scientist coat and say,
Mhm.
okay, if we were to like detach emotion from this, how would we observe it? And then like everyone's just pretty blown away by it.
Yeah, yeah. You're basically like, look, let's take Donald Trump away and let's just say that these 300 million people that live in the States are just guinea pigs. How would you
Yeah.
feel about this?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So that's like how that's like really strong positioning for like a political kind of brand. It's different in a business context, of course it
mhm,
is. Of course it is. Um, so in a business context, there's like several frameworks that have been developed and popularized for like how to find your position, how to find your message. You've got like the purpose, vision, mission, values thing. You've got start with why from Simon Sinek. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, apparently. You have this idea of like brand archetypes. Are you a jester brand like M&M's? Are you an explorer brand like Jeep? And then you have like the story brand framework. Your customer is Luke Skywalker and your Obi-Wan Kenobi guiding them to victory. The thing is, all of these frameworks I've used them and believed in them at one point in time, and none of them work. None of them actually like allow you to produce effective marketing material off the back of them. Um, the good news is that there is a framework that does work, and it was landed upon in like the 1970s from a guy called Kenichi Omai, who was the president of McKinsey in Tokyo for like 30 years. And he was like, there's really only three elements that matter: your customer, your category, and your company. The three C's. Like that's it. And so all you have to do is really like layer them on top of each other like a Venn diagram and go, okay, what's the intersection between what our customer cares about and wants, and how and where are we and who are our competitors? What are our customers comparing us to? And then our company, which is both our product and our brand. Once we kind of like layer on those three things, that bit in the middle, that is our positioning sweet spot. That's what we should be hanging our hat on and what we should be talking about all of the time. And so, what I do with my clients is I go through and go, cool, let's just dig down layer by layer. Let's understand your customer. Let's understand your category. Let's understand your company. And once we kind of go through this process, it gets us like 90% of the way there. And then you sprinkle a little bit of like creativity. You use your instincts to find like the angle that's most appropriate. And then that's how you land at an effective position, an effective message that you can turn into all forms of marketing. So I can walk you through what that process looks like if you're interested.
yes, please do, because I'm really intrigued, honestly. Because I think this advice, as soon as we're done recording this podcast, I'm gonna like type up all the notes. I'll be like, this is exactly what I need to do to grow my podcast, Entrepreneurs Galore.
Okay, cool.
So
All right. Well, in that case, I'll kind of set up a bit of a red thread here, and I'll talk through one client that I worked with, so you can kind of
sure.
see where they started and where they ended. Um, so this wasn't actually a software company this time. This was a big charity. This is the Make a Wish Foundation in Australia, and it was someone from it was a head of their corporate partnerships division. So like basically charities, how they make money. I used to work for charities a lot. Um, they get money from government grants, from donations from individuals, but most of the time, a lot of the time, they get money from corporations, from big businesses sponsoring them. And so it's a huge revenue driver, and it's kind of the only thing keeping the lights on in many charities is like corporate partnerships. And so I had the head Rian kind of come reach out to me, said, "Hey, we are getting a lot of inbound inquiries because we we are Make-A-Wish, we have an established brand presence, but like after they have a conversation with us, 8 out of the 10 people that reach out to us once, like every week, just ghost us entirely.
Mm.
And it's like, okay, well, like our current partners are really happy with us. What are we doing exactly? What's going on? And so I kind of like looked through their materials and I'm like, okay, cool. So we're talking in really, really general terms right now. We're saying like, this is an inspirational partnership, and you will change lives, whatever. I'm like, this is what every other charity partnership is saying. Like, you're like,
Right.
this could be copy and pasted into anything. We need to make it hyper specific to what you offer and what you do, because what you do is actually pretty special, not just like the outcome for the kids and the families that you're helping, but for the corporate partner as well. Like, they actually have data that says like, hey, we're actually having like a bottom line revenue impact by partnering with Make-A-Wish, because what these kind of the wishes that Make-A-Wish grants for these kids and these families, they're both like these amazing, life-changing, memorable experiences for the kids and their
Hmm.
families. What they also are kind of PR stunts for the corporate partners
Yes,
that make it happen.
absolutely.
And they weren't really talking about that or making a big deal about that. They didn't really know how to talk about it without seeming a bit sleazy, basically.
Hmm.
And so what we went through this process. Okay, cool. Let's start with your customer. What we never want to do, and this is like the what we're told to do in marketing, is like get together a customer persona, an avatar, write down what are their hopes and dreams and what do they do on the weekend and how many kids do they have and do they drive to work or take the bus. None of this informs like purchasing decisions,
Yeah,
right?
that's
It's actually
and that's
such a waste of
exactly
time.
the sorry to cut you off, but that literally hits home for me because that's exactly all the advice that I ever get. Even when I like took like a beginner's like copywriting course, that was
Mm.
like create your customer avatar and like this
Yeah.
is what they need and figure out what problem that you're actually trying to solve for them. And I'm just like, okay, well, I did all that, but like what's next? But yeah, please
You
continue.
don't feel any closer to the truth by investing the time in doing that exercise, right?
Exactly.
And I'm the same. Like, that's what I used to do as well. And I was always like, am I missing something? Like, why does this feel like such a waste of time to me?
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
and it turns out it's because it is a waste of time, and no, neither of us are missing anything. Um, all that really matters is what do they want. And whenever we buy anything, we're really buying on 2 time horizons. We've got the short term goal and we've got a long term vision. So if somebody buys lawn care services, the short term goal is they want a freshly cut lawn. The long
Mhm.
term vision is that they want a yard and a home that they can feel proud of. Whenever
Yes.
we buy anything, we're buying on these 2 time horizons. Um, if you buy a Tesla, short term goal, get a cool electric car, long term vision, help accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. If
Mhm.
you buy NordVPN, short term goal, watch Netflix from any country in the world, long term vision, protect your data from bad actors and increasingly tyrannical governments. Short term, long term, like these are the 2 things that we need to be aware of. And so, what we want to capture is, well, what are they trying to achieve in the short term? And what do they hope for? What's the reality that they're trying to create in the long term? So, we will ask the question, well, what do they want now and in the future? Then, the more interesting question is, what's stopping them from achieving those things? Because if that's something that they actually really want, then they would have already tried to have solved that problem at some point in time. And so why has that problem not been solved yet? Who/what is to blame? And so an example would be like for HelloFresh, like short-term goal, the parent wants to feed their children healthy, nutritious meals. The roadblock to that goal is that that work leaves them exhausted. And so dinner usually consists of whatever's quick and easy, right?
Right.
And then we want to back it up with what is our unique solution to overcoming that roadblock so that they can achieve that goal. So HelloFresh, they want to feed their children healthy, nutritious meals, but work leaves them exhausted. Keep in mind there that we're not saying they are exhausted after work because that puts the blame on the customer. We're saying work leaves them exhausted. Work is to blame here.
Okay.
The good news is that we send them everything that they need to make a healthy, nutritious meal quickly and easily. And then you can kind of like put that into a sentence, and that actually becomes basically your value proposition right there. Like they want
Right.
this, this is getting in the way, that's why we provide this. Boom. If you get really clear and really specific on that, you don't need to do any of this customer avatar nonsense.
Yes. Nice. That
Do I need
I
to
mean,
clarify anything there?
I think no, I think that you did a great job, honestly, because especially in like specifying and really like pinpointing that put the blame not on the customer, you put it on something else that is outside of their control. Because I didn't catch that at first. It was just
Mm,
like, okay, well, work leaves them exhausted, and I complete like it doesn't hit the same, right? Until you actually specify that. Notice that you're not blaming the customer, you're just blaming their outside circumstances, and I think
totally.
that really makes a big difference. Yeah, now that you point it out.
Mm. Yeah, it makes a
But yeah,
huge difference.
yeah, I obviously I want continue with the Make a Wish Foundation
Yeah.
story and what you did with that and what was the solution behind that.
Yeah. So with Make a Wish, what they wanted to achieve was really they wanted to, well, firstly we had to figure out like, okay, who benefits the most from this partnership? And that's actually
Hmm.
what you want to think about for any product, any service. It's like you don't pick your ideal customer. Your ideal customer is the person who will get the most value out of your product or service
Right.
because they are most likely to buy. If the people who are most likely to buy are not the people that you want to be working with, well, then you need to change the product.
Hmm.
So with Make a Wish, the people who were most likely to enter into a partnership with them were not these kind of like backroom philanthropy funds or kind of thing. They're people who actually wanted to be public, to like kind of have their name, have their logo associated with this event, right? And
Hmm.
so what they wanted was more attention. What they wanted was deeper engagement in the communities that they operate in. What they wanted was also deeper engagement internally as well within the company, because these make a wish kind of events, they add like morale boost internally within the organization, with the staff, with the employees. What's stopping them from achieving those things today? Well, there's actually like, you know, nobody trusts advertising anymore, so it's really hard to like build goodwill in that way. In terms of like where they are getting engagement from internally, that's really hard to do as well. There's only so many like pizza party days that you can throw. You kind of want to like get somebody from the outside and actually have like an external party create that morale boost and that engagement inside the organization. The good news is that's exactly what Make a Wish is here to do. So we get you goodwill and attention in your community and your market at large, and we boost engagement internally by having these kind of employee activation events as part of the wish as a whole. So once we got clear on that, then it came down to awareness levels. Have you heard about this concept?
No, can you actually explain that?
So awareness levels is really about understanding and answering the question, what does my customer already know? If
Okay.
you were to put an ad for a PlayStation 5 in front of gamers, and the ad read like, this is called the PlayStation 5, it can play video games. Video games are kind of like interactive movies. The gamers on the receiving end of that would be a bit confused, maybe even a little bit insulted, because it's not taking into account what they already know, right?
Gotcha. Yes, I understand now. Yep.
And so once we understand what they already know, then we know how much education they need before they will make an informed purchase decision. That's what we're trying to get towards, right? And so
Okay.
there are 5 stages that come from Eugene Schwartz. I probably won't go through all of them, but just to simplify, low awareness is when they don't even know that they have the problem that your product solves. Medium awareness is when they know that they have a problem, but they don't know solutions exist. And high awareness is when they know they have a problem, they know solutions exist, and they just need help figuring out the best one to go with. And so if they're low awareness, you want to be educating them with success stories and evidence and stats and case studies to back up, like, hey, here is what this problem is. If they're in the medium awareness, then they're kind of like problem aware. They're aware of the problem, but they're not aware of the solutions. And so that's where we actually that's where we typically see people talking about pain points. And this is a really key thing, because the big thing that we hear in marketing time and time again is pain points, pain points, pain points. Are you talking about their pain points enough? Try talking to their pain points. It's actually only appropriate a minority of the time, I would say. Because where most people are, especially in the age of information, is they are solution aware. They are aware that a solution like yours exists. And so what you really need to focus on is differentiation. What are we doing differently to every other solution that they are considering? And then how can we back that up with evidence that this is both different and better? And so with something like the Make-A-Wish Foundation, a lot of these corporations, whether they are going outbound to them or they're coming inbound, both ways, they are aware that corporate partnerships exist. And therefore, we don't need to educate them on, here is what a corporate partnership with a charity looks like. Here is how that will work. It's, here is how our partnership operates. Here's what that will mean for you. Here's our unique approach to getting you goodwill and increased internal and external engagement. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And thank you for the detailed explanation as well. I really appreciate it.
For sure. So it's really like you can kind of go further into customer, but those two things, understanding what they want, what's stopping them from getting there, and what our unique solution is, and then understanding how much educating we need to do for that market. If you get those two things right, then you kind of have customer pretty much locked in. So from there, we'd look at category. We'd go, okay, well, who/what are our customers comparing us to? And here we want to look at both the direct competition, like people who are literally doing the same thing that we are doing, and we want to look at the indirect competition, which is, what are people doing to get the same result as what we are promising, but without paying money generally. So for like, if you're like selling a copywriting course, then your direct competitors are other copywriting courses. But your indirect competitors would be YouTube, would be TikTok, would be ways that they can kind of get that information for free. And so you have to be different and better than both of those. And so this is where we go through a really kind of lengthy process of going, okay, what are people, we don't actually want to dive into like every single competitor. We only want to dive into like the competitors that our market is aware of.
Correct.
And then we want to really tease out like, okay, what are we doing that's genuinely different to all of those, different and valuable? And then we want to tease out, okay, cool, we have this cool feature. Let me actually walk through this exercise with Make-A-Wish in mind.
For sure. Let's do it.
So a really cool feature of Make-A-Wish was that they actually kind of like design these wishes with the corporations in mind. So a big airline in Australia is Qantas, and they sponsored a wish. And they actually, there was this 5-year-old kid called Dylan who wanted to go to the moon. And so that was his wish. And so what they did was design this wish with like the executive team of Qantas, of like the major airline in Australia. They got him onto the plane, flew him up and around, landed in like a nearby hangar, and the hangar was all decked out in like moon stuff with like people in alien costumes, and like you got to like plant the flag, and he was in like a little astronaut suit. And so that was like that kind of aspect of like, this isn't just like a kind of charity partnership where you send us a check every year and then you never hear from us again. Our unique feature is that we will actually design these events with you so that you can get the most value, and that you're positioned really favorably, so that we're granting the wish but also granting kind of your wish at the same time. Yeah. And then we want to think about like, well, what do they normally get, or what do they normally expect instead of this? So for a charity partnership, it's exactly that. It's like, oh, maybe we'll host a raffle, or just send us a check, and we'll put your logo in our annual report every year. Okay, cool. So now we can actually position ourselves against that, and we can say like, no more raffles, no more like hiding you in the back of our annual report. You're on the front lines with us, and we're in this. This is a true partnership. Right. And then we could extrapolate out, well, okay, what's like the value that they get from this unique approach that we have? Well, it's that this is how we boost that internal staff engagement, by getting them involved in like the construction and the design of this wish. And then the ultimate outcome is that they get goodwill both in the community and internally within the organization as well, and a huge kind of brand awareness and brand goodwill boost at the same time. So just to summarize, we want to unpack like what is a unique feature, what do they normally get or expect instead of this, what is the value of that, and then what is the ultimate outcome. And if you go through these with every kind of unique feature that you have, then it'll become very clear like what you should be prioritizing in your messaging. Because then after you capture all of your unique features, you kind of want to rank them from like, if you have 5 unique features, what's the most important one? What's the second most important one? What's the third most important one to your buyer? Because that actually informs the information hierarchy of your messaging strategy, and often like the information hierarchy of your homepage as well. Like, this is what we should be talking about, and this is the order that we should be talking about it in.
Dude, that honestly, that actually not only does it like blow my mind in a very positive way, but I think it's very spot on of especially from like the Make-A-Wish Foundation like perspective, in terms of like, hey, if you're just a charity and you're just looking for money and you're just gonna dump any major airline's name back into the annual report and just call it a day, that's not really doing that much for them. But like you mentioned, if you have some like type of construction where you're building an entire hangar worth of like equipment and making it into a moon, and just building out alien costumes or whatnot, I think that that'll definitely do a brand much more justice. And especially when you have like executives just decked out in their company's logo over there and taking pictures, that's a great PR campaign as well. And obviously,
Totally.
you know what you're talking about because that example was just beautiful. Um, I'm a little curious though, right? So
Hmm.
talk to me about how exactly you got started in this industry and field. Like, did you study it? Were you just like naturally attracted to it? Because obviously, I'm sure you started somewhere, and now you're obviously an expert, and definitely sounds like it. But how did you get started, and what intrigued you so much about this field?
Yeah, I got my start in marketing by uh, lying my way into an unpaid marketing internship, because I didn't have any qualifications. I never went to university. I don't have any degrees. I barely graduated high school, thanks to
And how long ago was this?
I started in marketing about 10 years ago.
Nice.
And I was working for this company, and I was really struggling because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was kind of like reading like the HubSpot blog, and I was reading Google search algorithm updates every week, and I was kind of like just trying to like get all the tips and tricks and the hacks into my system, as many of them as I could. And nothing was just like working. Nothing was moving the needle. And I got really like disenfranchised by the whole thing, and I was like, I'm gonna quit. I like wrote up my letter of resignation because I just hated marketing so much. But just before I handed it in, I met up with a friend who'd kind of worked his way up to like a senior marketing position, and I explained to him like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be leaving, I'm gonna be quitting soon. And he asked me why, and I told him, and he was like, oh, you're doing it all wrong. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, most marketing problems are copywriting problems in disguise.
Hmm.
And that kind of like set a light bulb off for me. I was like, oh, I never even really thought about copywriting that much. I just thought it was about like, I thought it was about distribution. I thought it was about promoting and like kind of, being loud basically. But copywriting calls on you to be more precise than loud. Um, And so I was like, okay, well, before I hand in my letter of resignation, I'll go through and I'll learn a bit more about copywriting. And when I did that, this whole world of like strategy and psychology and positioning and messaging opened up to me, and then I started applying that kind of stuff. And it was like going from hard mode to easy mode. Like the same audience that I couldn't get to much before were now flooding in, and that kind of set me on this path of like, oh, it's all about the communication. It's not about the channels or the hacks or the whatever. It's about how do you communicate the value of a product. And then that kind of like led me on a path, and I focused on that. And then I started working kind of freelance while I was working at marketing job as well. And I was on a sales call with someone, and this was the other light bulb moment for me. She said, "It's not that I can't write; it's that I don't know what to write." And I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly spot on. Like, it's not like people don't need more words. Like,
Hmm.
AI can produce unlimited words. People need a worthwhile message. They need something to say. And then the words are just a vehicle for getting an idea from your mind into their mind. But if you don't have a good idea, then why are you bothering communicating?" And this is where most brands are falling short at the moment, because they're like, they're loud, but they're not precise. They're not saying anything worthwhile. And so that kind of led me on a path away from like writing words for brands to helping brands find worthwhile messages to talk about. And that was another big turning point in my career, and that's where I was able to um, quit my job and earn like very comfortable six figures and lead a pretty nice life. Yeah.
Nice. So talk to me about like how long did it exactly take you from just kind of going from like, okay, well, it's not it's a copywriting problem, and then you obviously went to now, which is your main focus now of brand positioning and strategy. How long did that time frame take you, and what were some like key takeaways and some mistakes that you see brands actually making today?
Mm. It took me longer than I'd care to admit, to be honest. I was doing like the digital marketing stuff for businesses, generally working kind of in house at businesses and nonprofits for about 7 years, and kind of spinning my wheels and kind of like getting frustrated that like the senior leadership teams like didn't get or kind of believe in marketing in the way that I wanted them to. Um, and this was actually a big thing. The reason I started my TikTok account, which is, as you said, now over 100,000 followers, I just wanted to get better at explaining marketing to non-marketers. Um, and I think this is kind of why it worked, because I was literally like, I wasn't trying to sell anything. I was just like wanting to like force myself to condense down like one principle into like a 1 minute TikTok and communicate that effectively. And then just by doing that, people were like, "Oh, like, how do I hire you?" And I was like, "I don't know. I've had to get like a website together."
Right.
So it happened very kind of organically. And now I'm semi decent at communicating marketing to non-marketers. Um, but it was really like it was 2020 is when things started to change. I was posting on TikTok. I was getting a lot of experience working with businesses and brands from all kind of categories, and having the ability. This is like the big advantage of, I think, agency versus in-house. If anyone's got a marketing background, um, agency, you get to kind of work with a whole thing of a whole set of different brands, and you can kind of like see the patterns and see what works between those things. Whereas in-house, you're really only just focused on one thing, and you can kind of go deeper, but you're more limited in like where you're able to like perceive as like opportunities. And so now I'm very much like I don't really work on retainers. I'm much more of a liberating force than I am an occupying force. So I'll like come in, kick down the doors, get the positioning, messaging, copywriting in order, and then I'll peace out and I'll go to the next job. And that's kind of what I like, and that's actually allowed me to like really get a good sense of like what works and what doesn't work when communicating value, especially for B2B businesses, which is what I focus on.
Yeah, and I also saw that on your website as well. I think one of the great things about your websites, by the way, that I noticed that really caught my attention, and I'm pretty sure it catches a lot of other people's attention, is obviously you listed out in the two areas that you're most compatible with, which is and correct me if I'm wrong, please. It's B2B businesses and also software as a service, right?
Yeah, it's B2B service based businesses, like
Mm-hmm.
like an accounting firm, let's say, and then
Right.
like software as a service, B2B SaaS businesses as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
My
I'm very
apologies.
deliberate
Yeah.
about like who I work with and who I don't. So on my website, I say I'm a good fit for these businesses and I'm not a good fit for e-commerce and luxury. And I'm very obvious about who I'm excluding. And by doing that, it actually forces the people who are right for you to be more magnetically pulled towards you as well. Like, oh, cool, this person is like a specialist in this area. It's a big trust signal.
Yep, and that's exactly what I was gonna get to. That obviously everybody specifies on the things that they're expert in, right? But you in particular,
Mm,
you had actually specified the things that you are not compatible with, and I was like, okay, I think like you mentioned, like I think that trust factor was like, okay, well, if he's literally telling me that I want to hire this man, but he still won't take my money just because I'm a luxury goods brand, then I kind of trust him more. So
yeah.
even if I was a luxury goods brand now, that I would be like, okay, I kind of even want to hire this guy even more now.
Yeah,
So
right.
so it's
Yeah.
definitely like the like number one principle of reverse psychology. It's literally right there on your website.
Yeah, there it is. And I do have luxury brands reaching out to me with that same kind of intention of like, would you make an exception? And the answer is no.
So why do you think that you won't be a good fit? Like what is your thought process behind that? Is it just because of a lack of experience, or is it just because you don't really want to dwell in that field, or what's your thought process?
There's a huge difference between businesses that solve a problem and businesses that fulfill a fantasy.
Ah, okay.
And luxury goods are fulfilling a fantasy, and that's what copywriting in a luxury space should be doing, as well as the imagery and everything. It's where really like the vibe of a brand comes strongly into play in luxury goods things, and that's why you'll see they're actually very minimal on text, and they're very much focused on selling a vibe. um, and so I actually don't think that copywriting is like a super important factor for most
Right.
luxury brands or e-commerce brands where people are making snap decisions. Where I focus on is considered purchases, like people who really agonize over this stuff. And even in B2B, they form committees to decide what software to buy, right, for their business.
Right.
And
Yes.
so copywriting is so much more important in those fields. And so that's why I focus on that.
Understood. Yeah. No, I think that's a great differentiator because I didn't think of that when I was asking the question, but now that you answer it, it's like, well, duh. Like, how does this not make sense? Like you're basically pitting a luxury versus a necessity.
Mm,
So and obviously B2B software is not always all necessity, but it's one of those things where it's like you either stay afloat, or you just have like a really nice watch or a purse, or a Hermes Apple Watch band, or whatever the case might be. um,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So you always want to be positioning everything. If you are solving a problem, it needs to be a need to have, not a nice to have. If it's a nice to have, then it doesn't matter.
Understood. It doesn't matter so much in terms of like the copywriting standpoint, correct?
Yeah, I mean, and if you are like literally like solving a problem, but you're
Hmm.
positioned as a nice to have, then there's no urgency to buy you. And people are serial procrastinators, right? So like even things that I know that I want, I will not buy it until like it's too late. And so there needs to be like an urgency factor in these purchases, which is why, and luxury brands do this as well, which is why they limit like they make it so scarce, and they like
Yes.
put like bags in these like Chanel stores, and they don't even tell the employees how many bags they're going to receive this week. It's like, cool, I've got 3 here. I don't know when we're going to get more. Like it's engineering urgency, right? And
Yeah,
it's the
yeah,
same
yeah.
for B2B and problem solving things. It's like, well, we need to make you aware of how big of a problem this is and how much you're losing by not having our software. Otherwise, you won't be motivated to book a demo or go to the next step.
Yeah, I think the best example of that, of the luxury goods being scarce, is the diamond industry. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
like completely artificial supply. There's literally like you can have in lab diamonds now as well, and they're like so much cheaper than like naturally grown. But the
Mm-hmm.
marketing behind the entire industry, and how every woman is supposed to have one, it's literally the staple of society, even though like the supply is just literally artificially inflated.
Totally,
Um,
totally. They completely
so
control the supply and jack up the price to whatever they want. It's a cartel, basically. Like,
it
it's horrible. But a lab grown diamond's okay, but without the child exploitation, then is it really a nice diamond?
yeah, is it really worth it, right? Like
Yeah,
if you're not just murdering a few people here and there, then is it really worth having a precious metal, right? Like
yeah, exactly. I'm so glad that we're
um,
aligned here. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. No, I'm definitely gonna take all my not just business tips but life tips as well. um I mean I'm a huge proponent of like dark humor, right? Like I think obviously, things are already bad as it is, and if you end up joking about it a little bit, I think it's completely fine.
we can take the
I
pressure
mean,
off for a
I
second.
might
Yeah,
just get canceled for it, but who knows? But
we'll see.
I mean, I would definitely say that people are probably going to say that us talking about Donald Trump is probably worse than us joking about something like this. So then again, it's like, well, I think that that's just completely idiotic. If I'm, if you really think that your moral compass is, if you want to cancel me for calling Donald Trump a marketing genius, which he obviously was, it's not. I'm not supporting him. I'm just saying how it is. Yeah,
Oh
I mean,
yeah, I mean, I'll be explicit.
so
I think Donald Trump is like one of the most evil people to have ever existed. He's a
exactly.
dyed-in-the-wool fascist, and he's a
So
marketing genius. Like I can
exactly,
separate the two.
exactly. Like there you go. So I'm on the same page over here as well. Like I think he's a piece of shit human being, but like at the
Yeah,
end of the day, like he did win like the election, right? Like if somebody wins, like for example, it's like basketball or like football or rugby. If
yeah.
a team wins the championship, well, you can literally hate the team as much as you want, but they still won the championship, so they're still the best team in whatever league that they actually operate in.
I mean, even Steve Jobs, who I really do think is one of the best marketers of all time and will
Yes,
continue to be, it was a horrible person. He was a
absolutely.
garbage human, and a great marketer. Like I feel like we can learn from everyone. We kind of have to get out of our own way sometimes.
No, I 100% agree. There's like so many just instances of like Steve Jobs just being a complete asshole, and
Oh yeah,
like his early employees literally come out and say all the time that like, dude, we hated this guy,
oh
but
yeah.
like literally, if you don't own an iPhone, like it's like okay, well. Like it's so ingrained in our minds as well, and obviously I'm sure you think about that, you probably see this all the time as a marketer. Like it is a major turn off to own an Android device at this point, or if you see like a green bubble, it's just a major turnoff for like both men and women, and it's literally just marketing.
I
So
actually, I actually think that's an American thing. That's a uniquely American
really,
thing. Yeah, there's not.
oh
We don't
wow,
have that discourse in Australia at all.
oh wow, damn, I did not know. I really thought that it was worldwide,
Yeah.
but I mean, then again, I'm just like completely like American centric way of life and thinking, right? But it's
Sure. Yeah.
it's it's pretty bad over here. Like if you don't like, I personally, I make fun of people with like Androids, like my friends that have Android phones. We're just like constantly like going at it, and I'm just completely bullying them all the time, and I'm a result of Steve Jobs' marketing, even though he
Oh,
was an
dude,
asshole.
it's worked on
So
you. He's long dead, and it's still working on you.
exactly, now it's Tim Cook's marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So
But actually, if you pay attention to actually, I tell a lot of people to go back and watch the the presentation that Steve Jobs did when he announced the iPhone, because
mhm,
it is a masterclass in actually not brand marketing, but in like direct response marketing.
okay,
He doesn't talk about selling the vibe of Apple. He doesn't do any of that stuff like it all is now. He's like, here are the features, here's what matters, and he hypes it up in a way that makes everyone lose their minds. It's really like everyone listening, everyone watching, go and like look up that and just take notes on like how he's framing this and how he kind of
mhm,
like teases the value and like drops this like bombshell, where he talks about like camera, browser, phone. And he's like, these are the three big features, and they're all separate. and it keeps going through camera, browser, phone, camera, browser, phone, and then boom, iPhone all in one, and everyone just goes, "Wow!" It's a masterclass.
Yeah, no, I mean, such a who would have thought that like one singular device would be such a hit? Obviously, in retrospect, everybody's like, well, no, obviously anybody could have thought of that, but like this man thought of it, built it, implemented it, marketed it in the best way possible.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So
I mean, and Steve Ballmer, the CEO of Microsoft at the time, said like, "This is going to be a total failure, a total flop,"
oh
and he was
man.
wrong.
Yeah. I know I know those guys like Steve Ballmer, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. Um those guys are just sharks, dude. Like if you read like any of their biographies or any of their like just like anecdotes from like their life or like memoirs from like different employees, they're just sharks. They wanted to cut each other apart at all
Mm,
times. And I'm just like I see like Steve Ballmer now. He's a owner of an NBA team, right? A national
yeah,
basketball team. So
yeah.
I see him all the time. Like I watch basketball like crazy, and I see him, and he's just like this happy-go-lucky, very jolly guy. And you would never imagine him to be just like a shark in business, but like that man is ruthless. And I'm just like,
Oh
holy
man,
crap! And I
it's
guess
all
like mhm.
it's all
Go ahead.
succession behind the scenes with
Yeah,
every one of these big corporations. It's just
yeah.
cutthroat, 100%,
They really
100%.
are, and they put on such a great front as well. I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's just one of those things where it's like if you want to bring some type of revolution in the world, you have to be cutthroat. Or if you just want to make billions of dollars, you just have to let that part of you go, let that kind part of you go, especially in like the professional world. Like you just have to be a killer 24/7.
Yeah, potentially. I don't know if I fully agree.
Okay.
I think the landscape's kind of changing in a lot of ways because I think people recognize those traits and those behaviors, and it
Mm-hmm.
actually like if you kind of show your hand and one of these killers, people will shut you
Mm-hmm.
out. People are like, "Oh, you're like a threat." It's like in Survivor. It's like, "Oh, the biggest threat. We're gonna vote them out first."
Ah.
You gotta. There's a lot more. I think there's actually a lot more like compassion that's required these days.
Interesting. That's an interesting take. I'm not sure if I fully agree with that, but you might just be right. I can definitely see your point in terms of like the information age that we obviously live in today. So everybody like there's no such thing as like a private life anymore, right?
Mm.
So I see it from like that angle that I can see like okay, that makes some sense. But I'm not sure, man. I'll definitely have to do a little bit more digging, and let's see who the next billionaire is. And
Yeah.
if he's just a complete asshole, then I can say, all right, I have one upon you. And if he's like this nice, like soft, like gentle, kind dude,
Okay.
then
Yeah. Look,
I'll give it to you. So,
I don't. I'm not betting on myself for this one. Actually. Yeah.
so maybe you agree with me more than you actually like to admit.
I still have my ideals. I'm still like,
I, I
I've got my
respect that.
code.
I absolutely respect that. I have my ideals as well. I would love for the world to be a very kind and compassionate place, but it's just like, damn man, I've been growing old. Reality's been hitting, so it's like
Um, I
so
mean,
it's
the
hard.
next 5 to 10 years are going to be rough. I do actually think that we're not in a global recession. We're at the beginnings of a global depression, and the next 5 to 10 years are going to be really rough for a lot of
So,
people.
so elaborate for me on that. Like, how do you what are some of the factors that you think that it's gonna be much worse than what we're actually anticipating? Or like a depression is obviously worse than a recession, right? So what's
It
your opinion on it?
it all comes down to the distribution of wealth. As I mentioned at the top, like 93% of the wealth created in the last decade went to top 10%. That's actually pre COVID as well. So the
Yes.
numbers would actually probably be worse now. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly are worse now, which means that the bottom 90% are fighting over 5%
Just
of the
breadcrumbs.
wealth created. It's breadcrumbs. And there's no political will to change that because
Hmm.
the people who are in charge of the rules are benefiting from it. And so it's going to get worse before it gets better. That much
Correct.
is true, which is why there's a kind of a philosophy in, it's kind of fringe, but I think it's going to be probably become more mainstream, which is this idea of accelerationism, which is
Okay.
like this system is going to be really, really bad. What we should actually be trying to do is speed up towards its collapse and kind of rip the band-aid sooner rather than later, and let's not like drag this out.
Mm.
That way we'll actually get to a better outcome sooner than we would have if we kind of let it organically play out, which I think is an interesting approach. Maybe a little bit, I mean, it's also pretty cutthroat because there's a lot of suffering that's going to happen along the way, very acutely, but it's also
Hmm.
kind of going to happen anyway. Um, so I think it's an interesting theory, and I'm seeing more and more people kind of talk about it and talking about like, okay, how do we engineer this? How do we actually do that? So we'll see what
That's
happens
wild.
there.
That is absolutely wild because this is the first time that I'm actually hearing about accelerationism,
Yeah,
and I definitely do see how people can fall into something like that. But yeah, you're right. I don't think that it's become mainstream as of yet. I think eventually, in like the next year or two, or maybe after this podcast goes live,
yeah,
maybe
sure,
you'll have more people who actually research. Oh, what is accelerationism?
yeah.
Maybe they'll see like a lot of more people actually just going with that.
This podcast is a tipping point. Everyone's going to be talking about it from now on.
Yeah, this
From
is this is
now
this is
on.
this is the tipping point equivalent of Donald Trump deciding that he was going to run for run for
Yeah,
election. People are going to
sure.
look at this just two guys talking, and they're going to be like, "Yeah, no,
That was
they
it.
they they fucked us up. It
That was a
was them. It was
catalyst. That
both
was
of them."
them.
Yeah. So we
Oh, actually,
we are gonna call. Go ahead. Sorry.
should we finish up the Make a Wish thing and kind of
Yes,
let them know like
absolutely.
where
Please.
we
My
ended up?
apologies. Yeah, my apologies. Yeah, please go ahead.
Um, uh, so what we figured out was okay, here's our customer, here's what they want, here's how much education they need, here are the features that they would value most, and then we want to think about, okay, taking this kind of like these kind of raw materials, how do we best kind of position ourselves? And this is where we actually want to use an interesting device called a positioning narrative, which is very different to storytelling, because storytelling is one of the biggest lies that marketers are told and entrepreneurs are told, of like, be a storyteller. Have you tried telling stories? People like stories. Um, and what the advice is like, well, just watch Star Wars and then map those plot beats to your marketing, and then your people will like you all of a sudden. It's just not how anything works in the real world.
Hmm.
It's a fantasy, because it turns out that the best stories are actually told implicitly, not explicitly.
Right.
And they're told through these devices called positioning narratives. When I came across these, I was like, oh, this is like the glue that holds it all together. I'll give you some examples. So the most kind of classic positioning narrative is the David versus Goliath framing device, right?
Hmm.
An example of this would be there's an email service provider called Hey, who were made by it was made by the Basecamp guys, and they set up a big David versus Goliath frame where they're saying Gmail is the Goliath. They read your email more than you do. Your privacy is completely compromised. They are mining everything that you're saying for data, and they are selling that data to advertisers. What we're doing is protecting your privacy. We give you a great email experience without any of the snooping. It's so private, so protected. And so they set up that frame, and that worked quite well for them. Another one would be this idea of the specialist, which is all about like who who do you serve and who do you not serve? Who do you deliberately exclude? And so that would be like ConvertKit, which is like a email marketing platform like Mailchimp, only ConvertKit only specializes in like online creators and bloggers and podcasters and YouTubers. It's like purpose built for the creator economy. And so by saying like we don't even have all the same features that Mailchimp has, we have these a smaller set of features, but they have been optimized and fine tuned for this market. So that's what makes us the obvious choice. And then like another one would be challenge the old way. And so this is where you're not calling out competitors, but you're calling out outdated methods and saying, okay, this is how things used to be done. That doesn't work anymore for these reasons. Here's the correct way to do it, and here are the results. And a really good example of this is a B2B marketing agency called Refine Labs that was started in 2019 just by one dude. It's now like a $20 million business like a few years later. And it was really, it's like, this needs to be studied in the textbooks, this like messaging approach. He said, stop trying to capture demand and start creating demand. And what that means is like the big thing that we see in B2B marketing is write a great ebook or a report and then gate it behind an email form, right? Give us your email and then we'll send you this thing. He's like, that's capturing existing demand. That's not creating any new demand. And that's actually where the opportunity lies. So instead of hiding your best stuff behind an email form, why don't you chunk out that ebook, put it across socials and distribute it so that people, they get the value from you without having to like surrender their email address to you. And that way people will actually, you don't have to trap them into these nurture sequences or whatever. They'll reach out to you when they're ready to buy. And this is a much more effective, much more trust building kind of approach to B2B marketing. And he's got a whole set of kind of like opinions and points of view underneath that umbrella of stop trying to capture demand and start creating demand instead. So that's kind of challenging how things used to be done and offering a new way forward. So these kinds of framing devices are really impactful. For Make-A-Wish, challenge the old way was the most sensible kind of framing device for us as well, because we could point to, here are how charity partnerships are normally done. Here's what a corporate partnership with a charity normally looks like. Here's why that sucks. Here's why our approach is the best, and here's what the results are. And so then we could kind of like layer on, like, okay, we know what they want. We know how aware they are, how much education they need. We know where we sit in the marketplace. We know what features are the most valuable and in what order. And we know how to then express that through this kind of challenge the old way messaging framing device, this positioning narrative. And then we could take all of those raw materials and then we could fold it out into like the pitch deck for it. And so we were able to really take that and say, okay, cool. Rather than saying this is an inspirational partnership, we could say this is the only charity partnership that will get you maximum attention and build engagement internally and externally within your organization. And it's way, and like that was, I'm paraphrasing it, but that was basically the headline. It was really clunky and long, and it's not going to win any copywriting awards. But what
Right.
it did do was take their close rate from 20% to 85% in a few months, which
Dang.
represents tens of millions of dollars.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because they knew what they were signing up for, and they were like, oh, okay, this is different and better than every other charity that we're talking to right now. Make-A-Wish becomes the obvious choice. And so that's kind of what this process kind of leads to. That's like the results. And that's why getting your positioning and messaging right before you write a word of copy is the most important thing that you can do outside of building a really good product.
I absolutely love that, because it's not only taking account into what Make a Wish wanted to do, which obviously bring money in to their own foundation, but obviously what the corporate company or the corporate sponsorships, what they wanted to do, which obviously they wanted to get their name out, but at the same time they wanted to look good while doing it as well. So
Totally.
I love that, man. I think that is one of the best examples that I've actually heard about, obviously, like brand positioning and obviously marketing, just in general as well, because you don't really think of like how much marketing could like Make-A-Wish Foundation actually need, right? It's like, okay, well, they're just doing something really nice for kids. Who can be opposed to that? But like
Mm,
once you get into like the nitty gritty of it, like you definitely see like, okay, this is how they can structure it because they have to compete with other charities, even though they're just nonprofits as well.
totally,
So
totally. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It all comes back to answering the question, what's in it for me? That's all your
exactly.
buyer is. That's all they ever care about. What is in it for me? Give a good answer to that question, and they'll give you money.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think I think if anybody can answer that question well enough, I think anybody will give you money for that. Which obviously, if you're making more than six figures, man, you're obviously doing a great job in answering that question for your clients. Obviously, if you have clients reaching out to you saying that, "Hey, I will pay you, take my money," so
Yeah,
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 you,
exactly.
you
Yeah.
must be doing something right.
I don't
But
need to
yeah,
do any outbound or any of that cold email stuff, which I'm really thankful for
ah,
because I
dude, you're
hate that
so
stuff.
lucky. I love it. You didn't have to do basically the same thing that I had to do for you.
Yeah,
An
exactly.
outbound
Yeah.
comment on TikTok.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I love that for you, man. That's actually great. Um, Before we wrap up, do you want to do a quick rapid fire round if you don't mind?
Let's
You
go.
you down for that? All right, awesome. Okay. So, the very first question that I have for you, man, is if you had to start from scratch again today, would you still pursue brand positioning or what exactly would you pursue?
The most important thing that anyone can do is focus on their communication skills and learn how to sell,
Hmm.
especially for like a early stage or maybe not even early stage yet, soon to be early stage entrepreneur.
Hmm.
I mean, look at any successful like entrepreneur. Their first business was not the business that actually made them their fortunes, but it's what allowed them to develop the skills to convey value. If you can sell, if you can convey value of your thing, that is a skill that will stay with you for life. And so that's what I would be focusing on. Not even brand positioning, not even brand messaging, communication skills. Can you talk to people in a way that makes them go, ah, I see why this is worth it?
Understood. Okay, that's actually a great answer as well. I love that answer, man. Um, a second question: what advice would you give somebody who is afraid of taking the first step in becoming an entrepreneur?
Mm. I'm reminded of a sales pitch for it wasn't for like an online course. It was for like a system. It was like a proprietary system that you could purchase from this guy. Um, and he told the story of one of his clients who was like, yeah, cool. I've got kind of got my idea for my product. I just need to take an online course here, and then I need to attend this conference here, and then I need to read this book and deep. And he was like, you need to learn less and do more.
Yeah.
And that really hit home for me. I didn't even end up buying this thing, but that really stuck with me. I even like wrote it on a post-it note because I am a big procrastinator where I'm like, oh, I just need to read this book and then I'll do the thing. No, no, no. Learn less, do more. Learn less, do more. Learn less, do more. If you have a bias towards action, you'll be unstoppable.
I 100% agree. I think a lot of people are just literally they know what to do. They're just
Mm-hmm.
too afraid of doing it, so they'll just procrastinate on it. Like even when like with me like starting the podcast, I was like, well, I don't have the camera for it. I don't have like, the $300 amp system and the microphone system and
Yeah.
whatnot. And I'm just
Need to
like,
hire a
well,
studio first. Yeah.
exactly. Like I need like 10 different employees. I need a producer. Like no, like just
Mm-hmm.
get started and just focus on it and then eventually if I keep on building this, then I can hire a team. I can do everything. I can have somebody do like all the outbound stuff for me and hire all the guests and all my job then like 10 years down the line maybe is probably just going to be okay, show up and interview the guest, you know? But until then, you just have to take action and you just literally have to post those videos. You have to do whatever it takes for you to build something up. And it's hard in the beginning. Nobody's saying that it's easy, but it's up to you if it's going to be worthwhile or not.
For sure.
So, yeah,
There's always going to be like way more reasons not to do something than to do them. Um,
100%.
there's always going to be a good reason to not do it. Do it anyway.
Yeah, 100%, man. Just follow your dreams, bro. Like whoever you are, just do it. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, at least you tried. At least you're not gonna be on your deathbed and just like regret not trying. You know what I'm saying? So I live by that principle in particular, at least
Mm,
me personally, and I think that that's very powerful. And that's what I tell everybody else. I'm like, dude, at least try it. If you might, this dream that you have, or anybody that might have this dream of like, oh, I want to do this really bad. You might just try it and you might just end up hating it. And you're like, okay, thank God that I tried it, because now I
yeah,
know that I am not built out for something like that. Or
for
maybe you
sure.
tried it and it worked out beautifully for you. So now you're good. You don't have that like fear inside of your system either.
Totally. And
So
you'll learn so much more about yourself and about how the world actually works,
exactly.
which is just priceless.
Exactly. Segueing into that, what is the best piece of advice that you were actually given?
Mm. Maintain demand.
Mm,
This is something that Alex Hormozy has been talking about, and I got it from him. This is what first kind of
okay.
popped into my mind when he asked me that question. Um, if you can, if you can build demand for your thing, never cash out on that demand all in one go. So if you build like a an online course, let's say, it's a digital product, there are unlimited copies that you could possibly be like putting out there. But what if you only sold it to 10 people? And that way you still have 100 people who want it but can't get it. And therefore you have not cashed out all of that demand and you don't have to start from scratch. You can actually sell to 10 people, and then that actually raises the demand because of the scarcity built into that. And then that gives you so much more leverage and so much more freedom to actually like get customers in the door. Maintain demand. Maintain demand.
I love it. Any advice from Alex Hermosi nowadays is literally like gold. So I complete I love it, man.
I kind of I I hate how right he is all of the time.
Yes. I completely agree. That man cannot be right this often, man. He
uh,
needs to be wrong sometimes so I can feel better about myself.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Alex, so thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. Obviously, look into the camera, promote whatever you have, your services, any ebooks that you actually have, whatever you do, where people can find you. Go ahead, man. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, look, I would just say follow me on TikTok. I give literally all of my best advice. I'm not building a TikTok platform to convert people. I'm building it to literally share knowledge and share the stuff that gets me thinking, gets me excited. And I think that's the fact that I'm not building it as like a funnel thing, but more as like
Hmm.
a this is like a repository for like valuable, insightful content for all things marketing and positioning and messaging and copywriting. Um, Hit me up there at Meaningful.marketing. And then, hey, if we end up working together or not, um, either way, it's good.
I love it, man. Yeah, and I'll definitely have all your links down in the bio as well, your website, your TikTok, any other socials that you want to plug. Obviously, you can see all of that in the YouTube video bio down below. So please remember to check out Alex. Thank you guys so much for watching today. Alex, thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate you. It's been a wonderful time. And I hope to speak to you soon, man.
Thanks for having me. This is so much fun.
Awesome, man. Thank you guys so much. Take care.